All right. Hello, everyone. I apologize for the delay. We're just working on getting everything technically all set up here. Okay, sorry about that. We'll be continuing in our exploration of MaiMondays and the laws of character development, or however we want to understand the word deot. We were in the middle of the 6th chapter. We didn't quite finish the 6th chapter last time. And so we'll continue looking from there. To just give me a moment to pull it up. Remember last time we were exploring the mitzvot, mostly which come out of Parshat Kedoshim, in which you talked about the mitzvah of loving your neighbor as yourself, and the mitzvah not to hate your neighbor, to be, and it there says if somebody's wronged you, that you are not supposed to harbor resentment towards them. But rather, if they've wronged you and they've hurt you, you have the commandment to rebuke them, to give them feedback, right? To say, what you did, I think was wrong, and to help them to sort of see the error of their ways. Now, this is a very delicate thing because, when you come and you say what you did was wrong, if you don't say it just right and you're not able to reach them in a way, what ends up happening is you entrench it in them even worse. Right, and somebody when the minute they get defensive and they, want to defend their actions, and then especially because you're the person that they were arguing with in the first place, it becomes very, very difficult. And so, for example, in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, they say you shouldn't confront somebody when they're angry. Right, it's just not going to be effective, and you shouldn't try and nor should you try and comfort somebody when they're in the throes of agony or of loss, right? That you have to give people the opportunity and to facilitate even for people to go through the emotional process that they need to do in order to get to the other end. And yet we still have this mitzvah of tochacha. So remember we said that the word tochacha, rebuke, comes from the word koach, strength or potential. And that the idea that what we're trying to do is to give somebody koach, tochacha, although it's translated as rebuke, simply means to give koach, to empower. And so that sense of empowerment is really what we're trying to do. And in order to be able to give somebody the empowerment to say, I see you struggling with something. Here's something that might be helpful to you. And that's how we really need to approach it. Not as what you did was wrong and I got to put you in your place, because that just doesn't work. But to help somebody to go through the process that they need to go to see what it is that they're struggling with or feel limited in their own smallness, right? Their own emotional entanglement, perhaps, and to help set them free, to help give them, to give their soul the nourishment that it needs in order to grow. Hang on, I'm just pulling up the text. So here, I think we'll just back up a little bit, a little bit of review from what we did last time. We'll continue from there. Share screen. Okay, you should be able to. We should now be able to see the Mishnah Torah, Human Dispositions, Chapter 6. Yeah. Again, I'm going to just mute everyone so we don't have background noise. But if you have something to ask or to say, please feel free to unmute yourself. That I always say curiosity is a much better teacher than I am. If you have a question or something that you want to ask or contribute to the conversation, please feel free to unmute yourself. I welcome those interruptions. I look forward to them even. Okay, So he who beholds his fellow stooping to sin or following an unrighteous path is obligated to return him to good, towards the good, and to let him know that he's actually sinning against himself and pursuing wicked deeds. Right? As much as you think that you're gaining here, you're actually losing. For as it said, and thou shalt indeed rebuke thy neighbor. Right? That we're meant not to harbor resentment or to stand idly by when we see if you see your fellow in trouble, you're obligated to go and help them. You can't stand by and watch somebody, somebody's demise. And similarly, this is a situation when somebody's engaging in some sort of self-destructive behavior, perhaps, that we have to intervene. We can't allow them to fall victim to someone, and even if that someone to whom they're falling victim is themselves. So he rebukes his fellow, whether it be regarding a sin committed between man and man, or whether it be regarding matters committed between man and God, is essentially the rebuke be administered only between them both. Right? We don't rebuke somebody, we don't confront somebody in public, and that this is contrary to what have so in vogue today, is to get up in front of somebody and try and break them down and humiliate them and tell them you're doing this and that, and try and confront somebody as publicly as possible and on social media and everywhere, so that everyone can see how their moment of shame that's so far away from what we're going for here. Right? The idea is, if you're really trying to help them, to empower them to grow, so you need to do it in a way where they're not going to be ashamed, and certainly not going to be, even if there's going to be shame in front of you, that there's a detriment to that. And the understanding is that when you give somebody shame, they're not really going to be able to take it to heart, right? That what they're going to be experiencing primarily is the shame, and not the contrition that we're going for, right? That we want somebody to say, you're right, I've been suffering from this. I've been doing this to myself for so many years, or I know this is a bad habit and I've been trying to break it. And we want to get them to the place where we can help them, and where they understand that we're coming to help them. But when you give somebody shame, so they don't receive it in that way. They receive it as a slap in the face, right? And they become defensive and want to, or counter-offensive, right? And they start counter-attacking you at hominem attacks. This is Netzach. He's cold. Buddy, I'm teaching right now, so I need you to go. You know, take good care of you. You go with your mom, okay? No, thank you. Come on, Baba. Sorry about that. Okay, right. That we want to help them to get through what's difficult for them, And so the kind of saying, when I see that you're struggling here, right? I see that you're struggling. I see that you're in pain. That's a much more effective way of coming to someone's aid than trying to heap shame upon them. So it is essential that the rebuke be administered only between them both. And you should speak to him calmly, employing soft language, telling him that he does not speak of it to him, say for his own good. I'm trying to help you, and to bring into the life of the world to come. What you're doing is not good for you in the long, for your eternal destiny. And if you can get yourself straight with God, you'll be a lot happier. If you receive it attentively for a minute as well, right? If you can see that the person is able to receive that from you in a positive way, how wonderful. Then this, But if not, you should rebuke him a second and even a third time. I mean, in the sense that we see that they're that maybe it takes a while to get to penetrate. So it is a constant duty of man to continue to rebuke his fellow, even until the sinner strike him and say to him, I will not listen. Now, this is in certain situations, right? That you want to really help somebody, you need to be able to tell them the hard truth, and the closer you are with someone, the more leverage it is what you have that they'll not just blow you off, and so when you're close to somebody, then you really have the opportunity to help them. Whereas if if they could just dismiss you, they can. So, but even a person, you have to persist, to continue, right? If you see that this is your brother, whether it's your actual, brother, or your scriptural brother, right? As it says that prescribes, do not hate your brother in your heart, rather you should rebuke him. So it refers to all Jews as brothers. Okay, he in whose power it is to prevent sin and does not take the means to prevent it, he himself ultimately is overtaken by their sins, since it was possible to prevent them. And if you stand by and you see somebody going in to do something, and you let them go, and do it, and you say, oh, I'm not going to get involved. So, the sense is you're opening yourself up to that, or to another sin, and that it's going to come back on you. What do they call it? The Good Samaritan Law, right? That when you see someone in trouble, you have the requirement to intervene if you can help them. Now, of course, this is only if you can help them, right? If you see that there's a possibility that you can really speak to someone in a way that's going to penetrate and you can help them. If you don't see that they're going to listen to you, or that you don't know how to help them, so what can you do? You're not required to do something, because it says if you rebuke, if you rebuke poorly, it makes it worse, right? That you only further entrench them and arouse their ego and their self-righteous indignation, etc. And so you have to be very, very careful. So now he goes on. He who rebukes a friend at the beginning, no hard words should be used against him to shame him. Right? It says you should bear no sin upon him. Right? You're not trying to heap up. It's not a hellfire and brimstone kind of rebuke where you are going to do, we're coming speaking down to somebody and trying to. That's not going to help. But rather, you have to not bear. The purpose is you're trying to help them not to sin, and not rather than heaping the sin on them and telling how egregious what they were doing is, and that's not what we're trying to do. Thus did the wise men say, understand it, not by rebuking him. Thou mayest cause his countenance to change expression, for it is said, and it shall bear upon him no sin. Meaning the sense of you don't want to make things worse, right? That's the core concern. That if I see someone who's doing something that's self-destructive, whether it's a sin against the Torah, or something that's personally harmful to them, the minute they feel that we're coming to attack them, all of their guards go up. They come in, they're going to dig in, they're going to, and you're going to strengthen only their identification with that sin. But if you can see, Rabbi Nachman is always approaches, so you have to see the good in them. You have to see the good in them and try and help that good part. And if you can show them how their own good potential is being impinged by this kind of behavior, and that you see the part of them that wants to flourish and bloom, and that you're coming to help them. That's the way always to do it. As it should not bear upon him sin, right? You don't want to heap guilt on him. That doesn't help. Herefrom we learn that it's forbidden to put an Israelite to shame needlessly, to say publicly, even if it's just that person himself. Although he who does put his fellow to shame is not flogged, it is a grievous sin, right? We can't convict somebody of shaming another person. But this is one of these things where Hashem knows. Of all of these things, it says in the Torah when it talks about these things that v'yareita Elohim, you have to be in fear of God. You shall have fear of God. Yareita, yira, the word that we use for fear, for awe, is the same letters as the word he sees. Right? Yireh, he will see. So the idea of yira, of having fear, is knowing that you're seen by God. Yeah, knowing God sees it, and that essential feeling of being observed, knowing that what you're doing is seen by God. This is the only thing that can keep us honest. That if you're lying to yourself, it doesn't help. You might pretend to fool yourself, but you're not, and God, you can't fool God. Right? So oh, I didn't mean to shame you when really you did. It doesn't work. Even so, did the wise men say, who publicly puts his fellow to countenance to shame has no share in the world to come. They said it's equivalent to murder to publicly shame someone. That it's equivalent to murder. They also say in another place that it's equivalent to rape. That the public humiliation of a person is something that the Torah takes with the utmost seriousness. And it's something that even if you did it by accident, you have to be, I didn't mean to, but if you didn't take the precautions not to, so that you're still negligent, and that it's our responsibility to look after our brother's reputation, and to be as concerned about their shame as we are of our own, or even more. Right? Better to accept shame upon yourself than to embarrass someone else. And so he says, a man is therefore obliged to guard himself against putting his fellow to shame publicly, regardless of whether he be young or old, and not to call him by a name of which he feels ashamed. If somebody has, a nickname that they get called that they don't like, it's prohibited completely to call him by that nickname. And even if at one point it may have been complimentary, if they don't like it, so it's prohibited. So you have to inquire of them and not call them by a nickname that they don't want. Anything that's going to cause them shame, you have to be very, very careful about. Nor tell aught in his presence of which he is ashamed. Right? You're not allowed to also reveal somebody's secrets or something that they don't want getting out. Right? They say, hey, remember that time that you blah blah. If he doesn't want everybody knowing about that. So that's a severe violation of confidence, right? That if something is not been you've not been given express permission to say, you got to keep a lid on it. However, all of these refer to matters touching the relationship between man and man. But if it concerns to heavenly matters, if the sinner does not repent after being rebuked privately, he should be shamed publicly, and his sin should be proclaimed, and harsh words should be used in his presence. He should be shamed and cursed until he repent and take up the good path, even as all the prophets of Israel did with the wicked. Now, this is one of these very controversial things in the Rambam, where it may be different today in the situation we live in. And even though, yes, we see that, for example, Amos, was sort of as opposed to Isaiah, with whom he was approximately contemporary. Isaiah was, related by marriage to the royal family, and was, raised sort of at the royal court. Amos was a cowboy out from the hills. He was a yokel. A guy that had never been in the city, never been in, and he was coming in and sent to rebuke the decadent urbanites in his day. And he comes in calling them, fat cows of the Bashan, and comes in very harshly, speaking of the urban wealthy elite of his day. And publicly, and it says, this is what you're doing, that God disapproves. And so I say, how could that be that he was doing this? Doesn't that put people to shame? So the understanding is, no. If it's something that they ought to be ashamed of, so we should put them to shame. Now, the difference being is whether or not they knew better. Most people, certainly today, will have a sense that they're not shamelessly doing things, right? Someone who, for the most part, today, when people say people don't know, somebody's eating not eating kosher, and they're Jewish, but they're not eating kosher. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they're just not at that level of identification with the Torah. That they're not there in their spiritual progress, and maybe one day they're going to be there, but they're taking things on slowly. So it's not appropriate for everyone, right? Just because we're saying that this is something that you're doing, sinning against God. If you take this literally, then we should be shaming everyone. Now, we also don't live in a time in which or in a community. And there are communities today where sort of the expectation is that everybody is going to be completely adhering to every detail of halacha, right? But certainly in our community today, and in most of the Jewish world, except for some very insular pockets, there's always a very broad range of level of observance, and to put someone to shame for not being at a higher level of observance is not going to help. You're not going to encourage them in that way. So I think this is something that needs to be taken with a very heavy grain of salt. Remember, also in the Rambam's time, there was no such thing as a secular Jew. There was no such thing. The Jews in his day had enough autonomy that they were sort of had to enforce their own rules, but there was no way that a person could assimilate into larger Muslim or Christian society. You can't be a Jew and have everyone know that you're Jewish and not be related to first and foremost as a Jew. And if you are a Jew and you're not behaving like the Jews behave, so then you're going to be in trouble. And that through the medieval time, you see things that people were whipped publicly in shul for breaking certain things, for not keeping kosher, right? That there could be a person who was put in the stocks and is sort of humiliated if they were caught doing something that's unbecoming of a Jew, right? Because the whole of the Jewish community was sort of bound together. We largely lived in ghettos in all of the urban cities, right? That there was an area of the city that Jews had to live in. There were times when Jews were much more well off in Spain and in Italy, where you had court Jews, right? And they were sort of part of the aristocracy to some degree. But even so, they would be completely excommunicated and not allowed to participate in Jewish society if they weren't towing the line and keeping the law, and they wouldn't be allowed to integrate or participate in larger society without being baptized and publicly claiming Christianity. So there wasn't the same room for secular life as there is today. And so I think that those two things certainly contribute. That we shouldn't take this too literally today, and yet at the same time you have to be aware sometimes that they talk about that when you want somebody's true colors, when you have somebody who's for example, recently there was a whole scandal in Israel. There was a person that was posing as an Orthodox rabbi and inviting people to their home and doing all of this sort of rabbinic looking stuff, but they were actually Christian missionaries. They were bringing people into the home to teach them about Jesus and to preach Christianity, and they had sort of infiltrated the Jewish community specifically with the purpose of Christifying Jews. And so in that instance, everybody said, no, these people have to be outed completely. Everybody has to know who they are, and that they're we need to publicly and make it very clear that these people are missionaries. They're not interested in Jews. They're only pretending to be sort of this, and that sense that we have to get them out because it's a public, matter of public. I don't know if safety is the right word, but something along those lines. Public spiritual safety. And that there's somebody, right, not for the purpose of necessarily of rebuking them, that they weren't even worried about if these people are going to give up Christianity and become good good pious Jews. That is not the issue, but the issue is that people need to know, and when somebody is such an egregious thing. Now this is also involved in what we call cancel culture today, when somebody does something heinous and we want to sort of get the word out that they shouldn't be able to perpetrate their sin anymore. When you have someone who's a sexual predator or something of that sort. We want to make sure that everybody knows. Again, not so much because we're trying to get the person to repent. That's if that happens, that's wonderful. But that's on them, but in order to protect people, that this person should not be able to continue in their ways, and we need to out them, even if it causes them shame, right? And that this is an important Rambam in that way, right? That it says that even if it causes somebody shame, when we're dealing with something that is an egregious matter, that we have to publicly out them and cause them shame. Okay. He against whom a fellow sinned. This translation is a little awkward sometimes. Someone who sinned, who was sinned against, and didn't want to rebuke him nor to speak aught to him, because the sinner is extremely common or possessed of a distorted mind, but within his heart forgave him and lodged no hatred against him. Right? We have the mitzvah not to hate our brother in our heart. Now, it could be that rebuking him is a way to get to that, right? If you're carrying it around and this resentment into your heart, you have to confront him, right? Not just carry around the resentment and hatred. But if you're able to say, look, this person is, what do they know? They're too ignorant. They don't know anything about Judaism. They're not, and I'm not going to bear it against them, and I'm not going to be walking around, fixated on their sin, and rather I'm able to forgive them and move on. So that's what he says. This is, behold, this is a pious conduct, right? The midat chasidut. This is a wonderful action. It's something we should aspire to, is to be that person who is compassionate and forgiving. And when you see somebody doing something wrong, rather than holding it against them and being fixated on it, and rather just to let it go, forgive. That this is ideal. This is a pious conduct. For the Torah did not concern herself with aught against saving hatred. That the main essence here of the mitzvah of giving rebuke is so you don't walk around with hatred and resentment in your heart. And if you're able to do that, so that's a much perhaps even a better way to do it, right? That the sense of in the Kriyat Shema before bed, in the Arizal's Kriyat Shema, right? And it is found in this Chabad Sidur, and in most Sidurim today you can find it. That it starts with a paragraph which says, "I hereby forgive everyone who's harmed me and everyone who I've knows has sinned." Right, and that finishing the day with the sense of, I don't want to be carrying around negativity about anybody, and even again about myself. That we're happy to move on, to forgive, and to extend that forbearance to everyone in the world. And to say that I have the responsibility not to be carrying around hatred, to rebuke another person. If I can help them, that's wonderful. If I can't help them with my rebuke, then I still have the responsibility to find another way to let go of this. I can't still be carrying it around. Can't be carrying out resentment. Can't be carrying around. I don't want to be thinking all the time about other people's sins. Right? It's not a healthy and happy way to be occupying with my mind. And so we really need to learn to let go, not carrying around resentment, not carrying around frustration. Because it doesn't do good, and it certainly is a blemish in our love of our fellow Jews. Can imagine a hypothetical scenario, where a person who's worked very hard to become shomer mitzvot, and to rise above their various cravings, and to craft a life which is on the straight and narrow, and they see their acquaintances and people that are still going and indulging in all this stuff. You could imagine a person having a certain resentment, a frustration, or even say, I can't believe that they're doing that. I have to help them. And then you become that kid, that friend nobody wants to talk to because you can't get off your religious trip with them. So a very important spiritual skill is letting go of our judgment of other people, and being forgiving and having that forbearance. So proactively forgiving, or extend forgiveness. Okay. There are a number of times in the Torah where it emphasizes this, and he'll tell us. A man is obligated to watch out for orphans and widows, for the soul is very lowly and their spirit humble, even though they are wealthy in money, and even though they be the widow of and orphans of a king. We're charged concerning them for saying, you shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. People who have suffered a great deal and don't have, that are widows and orphans, all of the other things that they may have in life, are overshadowed by the depth of their loss, and so we're commanded by the Torah to be particularly sensitive to these people, to orphans and widows, and to watch out for them, to watch out for them both in both the sense of not to hurt them and also to make sure that they're taken care of. What then are the rules of conduct towards them, right? We don't want to be, on the other hand, we don't want to be so awkward around them, that they have a sense that nobody's being honest and real with them. One must not speak to them save in soft words, not to treat them in any way save in an honorable way, not to pain their body with labor, nor their heart with hard words, to be careful with their money more than with the money of one's own self, right? To respect them and not to be trying to take advantage of them, right? We see it a terrible, terrible thing. What a terrible thing it is to take advantage of someone who's in a difficult situation. He who worries them or vexes them or pains them or masters them, right? You sort of lord yourself over them or causes loss of their money violates a prohibitive commandment. Needless to mention, one who smites them or curses them, right? That is particularly egregious. This prohibitive commandment notwithstanding, that the punishment of flogging is not inflicted for its violation. This is another one of these things where we can't determine that you meant to do this, that you did this in a malicious way or in a knowing way. So this is not something that the Beis Din could punish somebody for. But there's another thing was that you have to know that God is watching, and that God is the one who Himself says, I'll take up their cause. Behold, the punishment for therefore is plainly stated in the Torah. My wrath shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword. And he goes on. He truncates the verse there. I kill you with the sword, and your wives will be widows, and your children will be orphans. There's sense that don't. These are people who are. God is going to come to their aid. In a vengeful and harsh way. Moreover, he who spoke and called the universe into being, right, made a covenant with them, that wherever they will cry out against violence, they will be answered. Even as said, for they will cry out unto me, and I will surely hear their cry. This is not just widows and orphans. I think it's anyone who's in a sort of state of disadvantage, of vulnerability. Someone who could be taken advantage of for whatever reason. People are going to take advantage of them. God is saying that, you got to be careful. We're getting ready to read Parshat Zachor, right? The commandment to remember what Amalek did to us. This was part of what Amalek was doing, is they were preying upon the weakest elements of society, taking advantage of, anyone who was sort of falling, stumbling, lagging in the rear of the camp as we were going on our journey. That this is something that God sees as particularly cowardly and heinous, right? To impose yourself on somebody just because you can. But all these warnings are applicable when one afflicts them out of a selfish motive. But if the master, in order to instruct them in the Torah or teach them in a trade or lead them in a righteous path, does inflict punishment upon them when they are contrary, behold, such you may do. Meaning, if your responsibility is to raise this person, to give them discipline, to teach them, so it may be that it's harsh. Sometimes tough love is not always easy to bear. But if this is what's necessary to teach them discipline and to teach them the important life lessons, so be it. Now, again, this is another question of V'yaraitem Elohecha. Only God can tell. Are you doing this for their good or for your own good? Right? Are you being cruel to them, or are you being kind to them? The content, the same action could be both, and so it's only God knows. And so this is why in the Torah repeatedly Hashem says, "Yeah, I'll take up their cause. You mess with the vulnerable, you mess with me." In a very deep way, the essence of the conflict between Amalek and Israel is about the right of the strong to take advantage of the weak, or that's the paradigm that they say, look, this is how it goes. I'm strong, you're weak. I take advantage of you. That's okay. No, it's not okay, right? And that Judaism doesn't see life as the strong are more entitled. Quite the contrary, right? The stronger you are, the more power you have, the more responsibility you bear, the more opportunity you have to do good in the world, and you'll be judged for it. There's no dispensation for the convenience. Just because it's convenient for you to pick on someone who's smaller than you, or to swindle someone out of their money, doesn't mean you're allowed. Under the sense of responsibility is first and foremost in Judaism, and not opportunity or it's not that dog eat dog world where you do what you have to do and whatever is all's fair, and all's fair in love and war, they say, and in business and in this and that's not. The Torah never sees it that way. There's no dispensation for taking advantage of other people. So nevertheless, he should not follow the rules of other people in dealing with them, but conduct himself towards them differently, to lead them slowly with great mercy and honorable consideration. Even as it said, for the Lord will plead their cause, right? That we always need to be as kind and as accommodating and as caring and gentle as possible with people who've suffered and are being. This is so important now, where there's a refugee crisis, millions and millions of displaced people in Ukraine, and as the host country, people in Poland, is this an opportunity to take advantage of people? There probably are people who see it that way, and on the other hand, this is an opportunity for kindness and helpfulness, unlike any other. And so do we see this as an opportunity to take, or an opportunity to give? Whether it be a fatherless orphan or a motherless orphan, the treatment to be accorded them must be identical. Now, until when are such called orphans for the purpose of the subjected treated herein, right? How long do we have to consider them orphans? How long do they have this special status? And the answer that's given is until they have no need to lean upon a grown-up person to rear them and support them, but each one is able to take care of all of his personal needs, even as all other adults do. That until a person is really, really stable and on their feet, which means if somebody has unfortunate developmental or difficulties, that they're not able to function, in such a way. So it's still the responsibility of the community to help them to get to where they need to be, where they can be self-sufficient and self-reliant. Okay, so that ends that. Now he's going to go on to everybody's favorite subject, which is Lashon Hara and Refuges. Remember that he started chapter 6 by telling us that it's the nature of human beings to become like the people that they interact with, right? To be I don't know if assimilate is the right word, but to take upon themselves the attributes and the traits to integrate into the culture around them. And therefore, we need to be very particular about who we hang out with and what we do with them. Among the most destructive habits, that the Torah sees we need to avoid is Lashon Hara, is gossip and speaking negatively about other people. And that this is something so insidious. The Rambam says in Hilchot Tshuva, we saw this, Rama says this is something that's so common and so insidious that everybody does it and doesn't even notice, and that the paying attention, to our speech and being aware of how we're saying things about other people is a very important trait in terms of character development. People who are careful with their words and careful about what they say and how they talk about other people, that's a very important sign of piety, and unfortunately in our society, not something that we grow up with necessarily, right? That we're not taught from a young age to be careful about speaking about other people, to only have positive things to say. Rather, we see in the world around us, and certainly in the era of social media, that anyone anywhere can say anything about anyone. Free speech. That's not that's not so healthy. Here, that our sense of making sure that we self-regulate with our speech, and not only with our speech, but not only what we say, but also what we hear, is very, very important for molding our character. He who bears tales against his fellow violates a prohibitive commandment, negative commandment. Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people. Lo telech rachil ba'amech. Am I here? Nope. There you go. Rachil. So this is the word for a gossiper, a talebearer. Okay. And although the punishment of flogging is not inflicted for violating this charge, is a gross iniquity and is a cause of slaughtering many souls in Israel. They understood that the fall of the Second Temple was directly perpetuated because of this sin, right? That the story the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, to put it very exceedingly briefly, there was a conflict between two people, and as a result of the hurt feelings, one went to the Romans and started slandering the other and the entire Jewish people, and instigated they instigated the violence that set off the violence that led to the destruction of the temple and the slaughter of hundreds of thousands at least of Jews at the hands of the Romans. And so again, this is another thing that there's not a punishment that the Beit Din, we can't arrest you, can't take you to court for this sin, but God certainly knows the difference, and the effect it can have in the world is terrible. It is because thereof that the following this commandment is this verse: neither shalt they stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. The not being, right, that you see, that's the same verse, right? You shall not be a talebearer, and you shall not stand idly by. So therefore, when you should not stand idly by, you should not stand idly by while somebody else is a talebearer, right? Don't let people get away with it. Don't let slander and negative speech and talebearing, gossip go unchecked. So now Goyi and he's going to tell us the story about Doeg the Edomite. It's not. He doesn't bring it here. We can even, let's see. We can even. No. All right. Not finding it here exactly. In any case, there's another case where it led to a slaughter, right? That somebody comes and instigates, starts telling things bad about other people when that were not true, and the result is that it led to an unnecessary battle which killed many people. the danger that is involved, is very real. Okay, so now he's going to define for us. Now, the Chafetz Chaim famously wrote a whole compendium it's called the Chafetz Chaim because he wrote the book called Chafetz Chaim, which is all about the laws and intricacies of the laws of Lashon Hara and Rechilut. Lashon Hara means the evil tongue, right? And sort of is a umbrella category for all kinds of forbidden speech. But now Rechilut is going to define for us exactly what does it mean. Here's what was a sycophant. Who is this Rachil, this gossiper? One who loads himself up with matters and goes from this one to that one, saying to each, such did this man say, that thus and thus have I heard concerning that man. Right? You're coming, you're telling people, even if it's true, right? Even though it be true, behold him, he destroys the universe. The fact that you're coming and telling people this and telling people that and bearing tales and wanting to tell all the things that happen that are not the person's business, that you're not, it's just trouble, it's just trouble. And so even though the things are true, it's still prohibited and it's still destructive. And that in general, people who try to be careful about this, avoid talking about other people, behind their back at all. We don't want to even mention other people. Some people say, oh, if it's clearly positive and you're saying how much you admire them, and so then okay, but maybe there's room. But even that, there are people say you never know how somebody's going to take things the wrong way. So better not to even speak about other people at all. There is yet an extremely grosser iniquity too, which is included in the prohibited commandments, as the evil tongue, right? That's the lashon hara. One who spreads a scandal about his fellow, even though he be telling the truth, right? If you say something which is clearly negative and you're trying to spread the word about something, oh, this guy did this, and it's something which is everybody's going to be, clearly understand that this is something bad. So even if it's true, you're still not allowed, and it's still harmful and even more hurtful. And if you be lying, right, and if you're spreading lies, that's even worse. And that's called motzi shem ra. Right here, motzi shem ra, one who gives out a bad name, al chavero. You're trying to purposefully stain somebody else's reputation. The owner of an evil tongue, behold, he sits in company and relates, saying this and this to this person at a certain party, and thus did such were his parents, and thus and such I heard about him, and of course he relates scandalous matters. Right? The president, people want to hear something juicy. This says that they want to hear. They want to hear about things that are going to be intriguing, that are going to allow you. I think part of what gets people off, on this is the ability to look down at people, make yourself feel better because you're not them, or you can look down at somebody that, oh, yeah, that there's a boost to your own ego that comes when you look negatively upon some people, and that this is a terrible way to build yourself up. And it certainly isn't going to help with the mitzvah of Ahavat Yisrael, right? That we have a responsibility to love each and every Jew. And if you're sitting here talking about them in negative ways, it certainly doesn't help with that mitzvah. Of him, the verse says, may the Lord cut off all flattering lips and the tongue that speaketh proud things. Right? That this is something that we're sort of invoking Hashem, saying, don't let this continue. This is a sure sign of a society or a culture which is ill, morally ill, as the Rambam puts it, is that they are sort of addicted to this kind of slander and gossip. And much to our chagrin, this is even more common today in person, but even in social media, right? That so much is about speaking about this person, and that, and this one, that. It's all about wanting to know about other people and how they screwed up, and we can cancel this one, and they're bad, and this bad, and it's bad, and we can learn all about all kinds of things about all kinds of people that have nothing to do with us, that we don't even know, we've never met, and just to satisfy a certain when you know something bad about somebody else, you feel like you have a secret. You're a little sitting higher. That's a terrible way. Okay, the wise man said there are three transgressions which call forth retribution for the man who perpetrates them in this world and disinherit him in the world to come. For those of us, for those who learned with us Hilchot Tshuva, we talked a lot about the things that can sort of lose a person their Olam Haba. We also talked about how the primary place of reward and punishment is not here in this world, right? Some people get some punishment here in this world, some people don't. But the essence, when we say that we believe that God punishes the wicked and rewards the righteous, that's in the hereafter. And here he's saying that there are three things which not only are you going to get it in the world to come, you're going to get your just desserts. You're going to get it also here in this world. And there are idolatry, adultery, and bloodshed. These are the big three that also you're not allowed to do, even to save a life, right? Idolatry, adultery, and spilling of blood, of murder. And yet it says, but the evil tongue outweighs them all, that the damage done to the world through Lashon Hara is far greater. The wise men said, moreover, he who speaks with an evil tongue is like an atheist, right? As if you're denying God. For it said, who have said our tongues will make our mighty lips are with us, who is Lord over us, right? There's a sense in the Psalms that those who are people who are so haughty to speak down on other people, it's as if they're throwing off the yoke of heaven, as if they're denying that God watches over them. That you're going to so brazenly speak in this way, you're throwing off the yoke of heaven. You clearly are not living in a reality. What you see, that what you're doing is being seen by God. So this is the defining sin. They say that brought down the Jewish people in the Second Temple era and led to the destruction. And until we get it right, we're going to stay in exile. And again, the wise man said the evil tongue kills three persons. There's three people that it harms: the one who speaks it, the one of whom it is spoken, and the one who receives it. Right? That if you're speaking, it harms the person that you're talking about, which is usually the intent. But it also harms the one who speaks it, and it harms the one who hears it. And therefore, we have to be very careful, not even to let ourselves hear it, and not to tolerate this. In fact, the greatest harm goes to the one who received the evil report. And now, your love of Am Yisrael, your love of every Jew, your integrity is sort of challenged, because now you've been baited with this juicy gossip, and what it does to a person to fall into that, to be brought into the net, this snare of this kind of speech when you weren't there to start with. A terrible damage. Okay. So there's certain kinds of words which are the grinding of evil, the avak, the dust of Lashon Hara. Maybe they're not themselves completely so much Lashon Hara, but there's still a little bit of, they're not so kosher either, right? There's a sense of, well, technically, you didn't speak something negative about somebody else, but, right? So what is it? What are those things going to be? One will say, who will tell the person to be as he is now? What does that mean? Somebody has to go tell him to stay this way, right? As if you're saying that the way he is other times is not so good. Or you'll say, hold your peace concerning that person. I'm disinclined to relate what happened to what was. You're sort of saying, oh, there's a juicy story here, but don't bother me about him. I got something juicy about him. That you're baiting somebody. You're sort of enticing them to say that you have a story, or like such expressions, right? Just the fact that you're piquing somebody's curiosity, clickbait. Even the clickbait, even if you don't click on it, is still prohibited, right? That sense of you're putting out there that somebody come and ask me, I've got something juicy, then it's already trouble. Okay. Even he who tells the good qualities of his fellow in the presence of his fellow's enemies is making grinding of evil tongue. Meaning, if you know that there are people who don't like, Plony, they don't like this guy, and you start talking about him, even if you're saying good things about him, they will immediately assume the worst, right? That they'll find a way to read it, to turn it to negativity. I see that a few people have just joined in the past few minutes. I regret to inform those who didn't know that we had a funeral in our community today. That Rabbi Rosenblatt has gone now to comfort the mourners, and so he and I switched our time slots. So to accommodate him going to the funeral. For those who just logged on and didn't know about the time switch, we're now just finishing the MaiMondays class. And if you go now to Rabbi Rosenblatt's Zoom room, you can get his class. He's teaching this week about the Megillah and the Purim story, and how to look at it with eyes beyond it as a children's story. But what does it say about a deeper dimension of the Purim story and whatnot? So I'm sorry that if the word didn't get out, we sent a notice that we were switching time slots. But for those who've just joined us looking for MaiMondays, we're just concluding MaiMondays now. I do encourage everyone to go over to Rabbi Rosenblatt's Zoom room. You can find it on the Sha'ar Tzedek website. If you go to the schedule of Zoom, it may not be updated there because this was just something that came up this afternoon. So as I said, Rabbi Rosenblatt had to officiate a funeral this afternoon and is comforting the families, and he's teaching now. So I encourage everyone to go to his Zoom room. We'll pick up this with MaiMondays next week here at the same time on Monday evening. Thank you, my friends, for joining. I wish you all a good week. And again, I wish you all a good night.
Good night, Rabbi. See you.